Let's try this mic again. Hello, everybody. Again, welcome to NativeScript Developer Day, round 2. This session, if you can't tell by the gigantic slide, is all about NativeScript tooling. And again, like I said last time, if this turns into some kind of crazy dumpster fire, feel free to leave at any time. I know TJ Van Tol is doing what I'm sure is an excellent talk on the NativeScript UI components in the other room. You will only somewhat emotionally scar Sebastian forever if you leave during his talk especially, but you know, he won't take it too personally. So who are we? My name is Rob Lauer. I help manage the mobility wing of our developer relations team here at Progress. And along with me in a little bit will be Sebastian Widelek, whose last name I always spell wrong. He just likes to give me a shake of the head. Did I say spell? Sound wrong. Say wrong. One of those three. Sebastian is one of our developer advocates focused on NativeScript. So he's a great resource for y'all to talk to today and tomorrow. So what are we going to cover? We're going to talk about visual tooling options for NativeScript. And I use visual in the loosest sense of the term because it's going to be some web-based resources. It's going to be some actual tooling. Sebastian's then going to kick in and talk about the NativeScript CLI, kind of some tips and tricks for y'all to use. And so let's just get started. It's going to be mostly demo, not really too many slides at all. So I'm just going to break into this now. Excuse the awkward transition. All right, once again, kind of hunched over here to the screen. So what I'm going to show you are, it's going to be kind of escalating coolness, I think. So let's start with some of our web-based resources. And I'm going to start with the NativeScript Theme Builder. Now, the NativeScript Theme Builder is a quote-unquote community-built resource, which actually I built about a year ago in my kind of community time. And what it does is it builds off of those core themes that ship with every NativeScript app. So it allows you to go in here and I can make changes to this color scheme of my app. You know, I can set a hot pink action bar, which looks totally awesome. I can change the text color. I can get into the buttons and change the, let's change the primary button background color to green. And you can see how it's going to look in all these different iOS simulators, all these web-based simulators. It gives you a pretty accurate representation of how your app is going to look natively. And you can see how quickly that I can do this, and it can look like my kindergartner comes home with a project. It might look something like this if you're as design disabled as I am. So in the NativeScript Theme Builder, what we do then is provide a set of pre-built color palettes. So we can look at some themes that generally look pretty nice overall. I can switch that theme, and you can pick and choose from here. Now, if I go in and I customize a theme and I can make it look, I can see how it looks on iOS or Android. And if I do some customizations, I can go click to download the theme. And you can see we provide some kind of verbose steps on how to install it. What it really comes down to is just dropping your core theme in after you do your standard core theme import statement. So it's really a matter of just downloading that CSS file and adding it to your app, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, if I were to make some changes to a core theme here or to a theme builder theme here, I can always go back and re-import it into this tool to allow me to further customize it, re-download it, and such. So the theme builder is great for customizing your app, getting into those different color schemes and getting, like I said, a pretty accurate representation of the app on a native device. Now, next up is going to be what Todd stole my thunder here, the NativeScript Marketplace. And again, the NativeScript Marketplace today is focused on plugins. So if I want to do a search for plugins, I don't need to demo this functionality, but you can see I can filter by text here. I want to look for Eddie Verbruggen. He is like our plugin god. He has a great fingerprint auth plugin that you can look at. Everything very straightforward here. The search is easy to use. You can see we can get access to all the docs, the screenshots, code snippets, and such. We can see how to install the plugin in our app as well. Very straightforward. Now, of course, as Todd mentioned, today it is just about plugins. And yes, there are other plugin repositories out there. You can use NPM. There's other resources to use. But tomorrow and going forward, the marketplace is going to be more than just plugins, of course. We're going to look at things like app templates, page templates, so the community can come and provide additional content for us that we can all share with each other. So look to the marketplace going forward for just more than just plugins. And the third web-based resource I want to show you is the NativeScript Playground. Again, Todd completely stole my thunder for this, so you're not going to be nearly as impressed as you otherwise would have been. But the NativeScript Playground is really a fantastic way for us to quickly and easily test some concepts without getting into our local development environment. And I do want to do a quick demo here, because you can see when we start the NativeScript Playground, we have a few different options, right? We can go with Angular, we can go with plain vanilla JavaScript, or we can go with TypeScript. For me, I'm kind of a purist. I'm going to go straight JavaScript. And now we throw you a loop right away, right? We say, now you got to do something with a QR code. What's this all about? Well, instead of having you simulate your app experience in a browser or use a cloud-based emulator that can be kind of slow, our Playground team developed a fantastic app that Todd showed you that lets you view your app in the Playground and basically in real time on your app, on your device. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to share my screen here. Bring up my QuickTime player. So this is my trusty iPhone 5S, which breaks my heart. I have to get rid of it soon. But I'm going to go ahead and scan this QR code. And it's going to bring up our sample app pretty darn quickly. And again, as Todd showed you, I can go in here, I can change the text here, add a few exclamation marks, and we can see those are added almost instantaneously. The amazing thing here is that this is actually almost faster than developing with live sync locally. Like, there's no tethering going on here. It's from the web to the cloud back to my device, actually almost faster than when I'm developing locally, which is pretty amazing to me. And it gets even cooler, of course, if I drag a button on here. Probably can't see this very well. If I drag a button on here, it puts the proper code for me. It also provides a tap handler here. So we have a handle button press event, which if I go into my view model, you can see that I have this handle button press function. And again, as Todd completely stole my thunder, we can see we can output whatever we want to the console log. So let's actually throw some styling on here so our button looks good. So we can say class equals button primary, and these come from the core themes. And let's save all this and see what it looks like here. So there's our button, and of course if I open up my log dialog here and hit my button on my device, you'll see basically instantaneously, again, from device up to the magical cloud back to my browser. So this amazing two-way communication, super useful. We can also go ahead and share our Playground with people. So I can just grab this URL, I can send it to everybody. We can collaborate on an app. You can download the code later on as well. So there's a download option. If you do something really cool and you want to download it locally, you hit this download button and it'll download a zip file for you to use. So super excited about Playground. I think you should all take a look at it today, tonight. Tell everyone about it. Now, the last thing I want to show you is NativeScript Sidekick. And of course, Todd talked about Sidekick quite a bit. Sidekick is really a huge part of the NativeScript ecosystem when it comes to tooling going forward. Sidekick really is your companion to NativeScript development. It builds on top of the CLI, so it's not a replacement for the CLI. And as TJ mentioned in his talk, when you develop an app with Sidekick, it's not replacing the CLI. You can still go back to use the CLI for whatever functions you need. It's really just a way to kind of abstract some of those tedious functionality that you may get into with the CLI. So the first thing you're going to do with Sidekick is probably create an app. And I know it's probably the text is a little bit small here, but I'm not going to go through the individual properties, don't worry. But the key thing I want to point out with creating an app is that you have a choice with project types. You can choose a vanilla JavaScript app. You can choose a TypeScript app. You can choose an Angular app. And each one of those options, each one of those project types has 5 different templates to choose from today, which we're always going to be looking to add in the future. We have a couple of navigation-based ones and then a couple of master detail, a little more complicated UI based on Firebase and Convey. And of course, you get a nice little preview of the app in this window here. Now, I have a pre-existing app that I created with Sidekick, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And you can see that, again, getting back to some of those tedious, like setting some of those properties, I can go into the specific iOS and Android tabs to see some of those traditional properties that you may want to set for your app. With Android, we get into this like disaster of the 8 million different Android permissions you can set. The Assets tab, I think, is going to be a pretty cool thing going forward. Today, you can see your app icons and you can see your splash screens. Going forward, the Sidekick team plans on actually adding functionality to allow you to generate these within the tool. So provide one master image for your icon and have it just automatically fill in all these icons for all the platforms, especially because today, when you look at iOS and Android, there's like 20 different icons you need to make. And the plugin section. Now, the plugin section is where it gets pretty interesting as well, because we get into two different tabs here. If I look at the installed tab, I can see all the plugins that are installed with my app. More importantly, if there's updated versions for these plugins, we will see that here, and we'll be able to click on a plugin and update it as well. So you can see the latest version is 3.06. I have 3.04. I can just click here to update it. And now under the Available tab, you see today, maybe you can read that, maybe not, it says search the NPM registry. In a future release of Sidekick, we're actually going to look at searching the NativeScript marketplace for plugins as well. So kind of tying everything together here going forward. Now, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Let's look at running an app, because this is where the beauty of Sidekick comes into play. So today, I can build an app for iOS or Android, of course. And if I have the local dependencies installed, you'll see the local build option here, which I do, which is awesome. Now, if I were on Windows, I could actually build an iOS app on Windows, which a lot of us, I actually come from a Windows background, a .NET developer for many years. The ability to develop for iOS on Windows is really pretty critical. So I could choose here to develop for a cloud build. And you'll see I get a little warning here that I don't have my provisioning profile. I don't have a provisioning profile or certificates set up for this app. Well, cool thing is, in the past, if you're developing on Windows, you would need to go to a Mac to generate that CSR, that certificate signing request. But now with Sidekick, you can actually go to the Tools menu, and you can create a CSR from the tool. So I just enter in my name, email, country, and it creates a CSR that I then load into the Apple Developer Portal, all without needing a Mac. But what I want to do is actually run an app on a device. So I can choose, instead of just a build, which is going to create a build that maybe I send to somebody or send to the App Store, I can choose to run this app on a device. Now, of course, here it says that following devices do not have valid code signing credentials. Okay, well, that makes sense because it's a brand new app, and I haven't done that crazy stuff in the Apple developer site to set up the certificate, set up the provisioning profile. But an option I have now is to actually have Sidekick auto-generate a provisioning profile and certificate for me based on this device ID. Now, the only catch here is that you have to be using a free Apple developer account. So what we do is if you have an Apple ID that's not associated with a paid Apple developer account, you can actually have Sidekick auto-generate a provisioning profile certificate for you based on the connected device IDs you have. So you simply enter your Apple ID and password here, and it'll create it for you. So it gives you that seamless provisioning to a device right from Sidekick. So let's take a quick look at debugging on Android. So I'm going to create a local build of my Android app, and let's run it on device here. And you can see our little output window here. It gives us information on what's going on. This is when I have to awkwardly talk while a build is running, kind of fill in this dead air. No, that's a trick. So Apple doesn't, if you have a paid account, Apple doesn't expose those same APIs. So you do have to go, it's more of a manual process of finding out your device ID and associating that with the provisioning profile in the Apple Developer Portal. But ironically, if you have a free account, we can do it all for you. It's unfortunately a limitation on Apple's part. So unfortunately, I don't think that capability is here yet. I can't zoom in here, but you can see that when I chose to start debugging with that checkbox, we can actually access a variety of tabs in the Chrome developer tools from within Sidekick. So if I get in here, you can just you can pretend I'm telling you the truth here. You can actually inspect all of your elements, get down in the details. The cool thing here is I'm seeing the current state of my app. So if I go in and change my browse to browse for cars, and that will be reflected right away in my emulator, which again, you can kind of see. And I've said this a couple times in the last session. There's going to be a great session tomorrow from wonderful Peter here on the Chrome DevTools, which you should definitely attend. But you do have access to a variety of tabs here. You have the Elements tab, the console. You can look at inspect your resources. You can take a look at your network performance. If there's any latency with any remote resource, you can check that here. And we're always looking to add access to more tabs going forward, so we're going to see some great things from our engineering team in coming releases. So really what you can see with Sidekick is we're slowly but surely kind of addressing the entire app lifecycle and wanting to make sure that you have all the tools you need to quickly and easily develop a NativeScript app across different platforms and across different development platforms. So whether I'm on Mac, Windows, or Linux, they will all work just fine. And there's one other thing I did want to announce today, which I don't believe Todd announced, is that, hold for suspense, we do have Sidekick for Visual Studio coming out as well. So in the coming weeks, we're going to have a preview version of this native Visual Studio extension that's going to give you access to all of these Sidekick functionality, but within your beloved Visual Studio IDE. If you're a traditional Windows developer, you'll be able to do cloud builds, create app templates, do your live sync debugging, all of that from within Visual Studio. So look for that to come, a preview of that in the coming weeks. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sebastian for his thrilling CLI part of this talk. Yes, I set you up.
I'm definitely going to go for threading.
You want to just put it on top of it?
Sure. No.
No? It's slide right now.
It is going to slide. All right, I'll do it. What'd you do?
Would you tell me the mic is?
It's the other side. How are we doing? Let me see. Still works? Oof, where is it? Ooh, that's gonna be interesting. All right, cool. So my name is Sebastian Vitalec, and that's how you pronounce my surname, Rob. And like I usually like to do my sessions funny, so I'm gonna open with a joke that you should use CLI because live is too short and painful sometimes. So let me just do like a very quick introduction of some of the basic stuff that you know. When Rob initially asked me to do like this session, I was like, yeah, sure, I do it. Like I know all the two commands that we have, TNS run and TNS debug. And then I opened the documentation and there's more. So I was like, okay, so maybe it won't be just 2 slides. I got 3. No, I got more. So let's start with the basics and creating a project. So these are the stuff that everybody knows. Like you want to create a project, you just run TNS create and provide an app name, and that will create you a JavaScript project, right? If you want to do the same thing for TypeScript, you just do --tsc, or if you want to do Angular, which is pretty much 99% of my projects, then you do --ng, right? And that's pretty much like everybody was like, yeah, like we know about creating projects, but that's not all. And this is actually my feature is even more like that I like more is the fact that you can use templates. So out of the box, we have a whole bunch of templates. So if you want to use one of them, you do again TNS create, provide app name, then you say --template, and you provide a template name. So just like in Sidekick, there's a bunch of templates. You have the TNS template tab navigation, and we have 3 flavors of it. So you have the one with JavaScript, there's a TypeScript one, and there's NG. So basically, if you want to, for example, create a template for Angular with tab navigation, you just write TNS create app name --template, and then you can say like TNS template tab navigation NG, because that's like one of the longest commands you can type. All right. We also have like the template drawer navigation. There is a master detail. And also we have the one for Kinvi. So if you want to create your own Nadidas or any other Na something, you could use that template as a starting point, and that will work pretty well. And one more thing that you can use templates for, if you create your own projects and you put them on GitHub, instead of template name, you can actually provide a GitHub URL. So if you're ever thinking of creating NativeScript workshops or something similar, or if you have a template that you always start with, you just put it on GitHub, and then you could just use it as a basis for your projects, which is pretty cool. All right. So once we created a project, we're going to go into initializing it, right? So most of the time, what we do is, if it's like a completely fresh project, you would run TNS platform add and then specify which of the platforms you want. If you want to write just for iOS, you do iOS, Android, or you could do both, right? However, sometimes you could find a project that somebody else already created. And in this case, you don't do just platform add, but what you should actually run is TNS init. And then in this case, like if that project has any specific NPM modules, that will automatically install all those modules, but as well, like if this project is set up for iOS or Android, TNS init is gonna do all the installations and everything that you need, so that the next thing what you can do is basically run the app, right? So running, basics. This was one of the 2 commands that I always knew. So we have TNS run, and if you wanna run for iOS, you run iOS, for Android, Android. The thing is that, for example, if you don't have any devices connected to your machine, this will automatically kick off one of your emulators. However, if you already have like your phone connected, then this will not start a new emulator or anything. It will just run it on your device. Another cool thing is, like if you run, let's say TNS run iOS, and you have 2 devices connected, and you have 3 emulators open, it will open on all of them, which is quite cool. But one thing that I just learned recently, you can just call TNS run. And in this case, it's like if you have a couple of Android devices, couple of iOS devices connected, you run on both of them, like on all 4 of them, or however many you have connected, and you have a mix and match between even real devices and emulators, which is very, very handy. So for demos, when you want to show how it looks nicely on iOS and Android, you don't have to run it separately. There's few useful flags that you can use. So there's one called just launch. So if you do -- just launch, then basically this will build the application, but it will not use live sync. And then as well, if the app is already built, it's not going to go through the whole build process. You just like launch the application into your devices that are connected. And obviously, you can run TNS run just launch. So you can either specify which platform you want to run it for, or you could say like just whichever is connected, run it on all of them, right? We actually had a quite interesting conversation recently on the exact behavior of TNS run, whether it's like if you have just iOS device open, should it open Android emulator or whatever it should be. I think we ended up with like whatever is open, use that and don't necessarily open new things. Right, Rosen? Right? Yeah. Keep nodding. Okay. There's another one, and that used to be like a thing, like sometimes when you install a new plugin, and if you haven't installed it properly, and I'll talk about installing plugins later, you might want to go and then delete the platforms folder to rebuild the application. It's like one of those tricks, right? That if the app doesn't build, just delete the platforms folder and rebuild. Like everybody knows it. But rather than do it manually, you can actually add the -- clean flag. And then this will pretty much clear your build folder and then rerun the build properly, so you don't have to do anything manually. This is pretty cool. TNS device, this one is pretty cool. It's one of my favorite, especially when I run workshops. So this is useful where, and I can actually show you. No, I have to do it this way. Let's see. So I want to show you TNS device. So I actually have already the emulator open over here. So I'm in the CLI, and I can, for example, run TNS device, and this one's pretty cool. And what it will do is basically it will check what devices are connected currently. So you will look for any physical devices or any emulators. So I only have my iOS emulator running. But if I had my phone connected, it will as well list them over here. And what we can use from here is we have this device identifier, which is coming handy every now and then. Why this is significant is very often when you try to set up your phone or tablet for development, and like, for example, you run TNS run Android, and it's like the whole build crashes because it complains that device is not there. So this is a very quick step to verify, is my device recognized by the machine? And it's actually behind the scene, for example, for Android, we actually run ADB devices command, which actually asks Android like, hey, do you see any Android devices? And then we do the similar thing on iOS side. What I can do with this as well, I put it in 2 lines. Let me try again. What I can do with this as well, like I have another command, and I'll jump to the presentation later, where I can do tns run -- device and provide the device ID. So if I have multiple devices connected and I run tns run iOS, it will run on all of them. But if I do tns run iOS device and then provide this ID, including B, you basically build the application and run on this specific device. Like, I mean, it's not much of a benefit because I have just one thing open, but normally if you have multiple, this you can actually select one. So this is like the opposite of tns run with nothing, right? And there you go, it worked. I could show you how it is without device, but it's going to be the same result. So maybe not. That was supposed to be funny. Yay, works. All right. So just to recap, like if you use together tns device and then tns run -- device, you can kind of select which device you want to run. And as well, you can mix and match the flags. So you could do like -- device ID, and then -- just launch, or any other flags that we have. And it will work pretty nice. Bless you. So the other thing, how do I get help? You could either go and try to Google for stuff, or you could use the -- help flag. So pretty much any command that's there, there's information that you can find out like about that command. So if you run tns, whatever command is, -- help, it will help you. So we could, for example, run tns create -- help, and we'll get like all the options and things that you can do with create. You can also, like, it's not just about, let's say, tns run -- help, but we could even say, what do we have around run Android? Are there any special flags that are specific for that? Or we could just run tns -- help. So when I run tns -- help, that actually provides you with like overall overview of all the commands, but as well it can open in a browser our documentation on that. So I can probably show you very quickly. So if you run tns -- help, we'll get access to our documentation, which kind of lists like all sort of commands that you have. Oh, by the way, autocomplete is another really handy one. So if you're lazy like me and you don't want to type everything, you can just hit tab and then it will complete the command for you. Anyway, I'm not going to be going through this documentation just now. All right, so that's how we all get help. Debugging. So pretty much everywhere we show you, like you've been Sidekick or anywhere, like it's all about debugging and having additional tooling to help you go beyond console log, right? Like console log is so 90s, right? We're in the 21st century, right? 22nd? Which one are we? We should be at least 22nd now. So for debugging, surprise, surprise, you just have a tns debug command. And then you can run on iOS and Android. And what's really cool about it is that debugging actually runs automatically with live sync. So just like when you run tns run Android iOS, and as you make changes, the application keeps refreshing every time. The same thing applies for tns debug. So you don't have to go through like the whole build every time. It actually will refresh very quickly. And if you, for example, running Google Chrome DevTools, you just have to press the button to refresh DevTools. And you have like, you freeze your app for a few seconds while everything loads, and then you can debug again. So if you had any breakpoints open or anything set up in there, all of that will remain there, which is pretty handy. But you'll see all of that tomorrow. I would show you it again, but you've seen it already like 5 times, right? All right, plugins. That's one of the last things I have. So very often, like when you look at any of our plugins, like if you, for example, go to npm.js and search and find a plugin, you always get like a little command saying, in order to install this plugin, you just run npm I and whatever name of the plugin, which is fine, except it isn't. So what happens is very often our plugins is not just about the JavaScript code that gets added to the node modules, but quite often like there might be some native library that is attached with it. And we have this thing called metadata generating process, which is able to actually take a native library and add it to the project so that NativeScript itself will be able to access that specific library's functions directly. from JavaScript. So if we just do run npm I and the node module, like the metadata generator will not know about the additional requirements. So what we really should be doing is run tns plugin add and then provide the plugin name. So that will basically do like a clean installation of the plugin, and then you notify NativeScript as well, like, hey, there's some additional stuff you should know about. And then you can use your plugins really, really well. I'm pretty sure Rosen would tell me that it was all wrong, but you should use this command, that's for sure. That's the key thing. Trust me, I lost my hair because I was using the wrong command. That's the reason, if you have to ask. Well, that's my last slide, and something I'm quite proud of. So you all know, like, if you're into Angular, and if you try to build like any websites with Angular CLI, like everybody loves it because it allows you to scaffold all the whole project really quickly. So if you want to create services, components, modules, like you don't have to manually create all those files. And unfortunately, we don't have that available right now in NativeScript. Except I created this plugin called, did I spell it right? Yep. Which is called NativeScript Angular CLI. And then in order to install it, you just have to run tns extension install and then provide a name. And this will add additional commands to your CLI, which at the moment are specific to Angular. And then you can run commands like this. So if you want to create a new component, you can just run tns generate component name, or for short, you can do tns gc name, and that will generate the component of that name. So like you already set up all the HTML files, the CSS, the TypeScript files. You want to create a module, you want to create a service or pipe. You can either use the full name, generate, and like the full name, or you could say tnsgs name for service. And that pretty much will go and scaffold your application and then add things. There's some things that I still have to improve. So at the moment, you would just generate the files, but you will not add those services or components into your ng module just yet. But at least it creates the things. So you can actually speed up the whole process. So that's me and the CLI. Like you see, there's more than 2 commands that you should all know about. Yeah, thanks for your time. Hey, I'm spot on time. Look at me. Look at me.